Welcome back to another video with Onpoint Politics, and today I'm going to be looking at the latest poll Socalresearch / Onpoint Politics conducted for the state of Virginia. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this, and make sure to go ahead and donate to our crowdfunding for our Michigan and Pennsylvania poll. We are going to contact 750 registered voters in each of these two states to poll them and see what we can get out of registered voters for a sample. Make sure to go ahead and donate if you can. All support is greatly appreciated. Now, basically talking about this, the latest poll that we conducted in the state of Virginia, Socalresearch, what's quite interesting is that Donald Trump is only down 3 points in the state of Virginia going against incumbent President Joe Biden. And when we look at a Trump versus Harris matchup, Trump and Harris are actually tied, by the way, which is very fascinating. Trump and Harris are actually tied in the poll. And if we look at the breakdown, we basically go over, Trump and Harris are tied. Biden is leading Trump by 3. And we see President Biden is locked in a tied race with former President Trump. We see that there. Onpoint Politics / Socalresearch Virginia poll was conducted using the Pollfish panel starting July 6, 2024, ending on July 11th. Respondents were discarded if they were not registered. The poll had a sample size of 1,000 and a plus/minus 2.1 margin of error. It is important to note the margin of error does not account for changes in vote intention, undecided voters, or a non-representative sample. Data collection, obviously we use Socalresearch, and we did weighing based on, race, education, age, gender, party ID, and vote history. That's pretty much what we did it on. And here's the breakdown of the sample, which comparing, our samples to the previous exit polls from, Virginia elections. This is actually a pretty realistic sample size as of right now. And when we look at the crosstabs, we actually see that Joe Biden is performing not that great with Asians. He's underperforming with them from 2020. We did pull back to 2020. It shows Biden winning the state by 7, but we did have a significant amount of the electorate here saying that they did not vote and that they voted for someone else, even though the someone else vote was really like 1% in 2020. So this sample could be off. And so we see here with Asian voters, Biden is really overperforming in 2020 compared to now. African Americans, for whatever reason, there's a significant chunk of them that did not vote in the previous election. And what's quite interesting is that if we actually look at them here, we can actually see that the voters here, about 60% of them are Democrat, 15% are Republican, and 23% of them are independent. So that is something pretty interesting to note as well. Hispanics, we see Joe Biden, did very well with them in 2020, still doing somewhat well with them in this poll here. I think the Hispanic margin in the state is a little too much for Biden here. I also think with white voters, we see Donald Trump is winning them by about 12 or so. That's roughly what we're looking at there. Donald Trump won them by 7 here, but I believe in 2020, he actually won them by about 8. So the white sample was pretty much about right in the poll. We see here college and non-college. We see no college is essentially tied. Joe Biden won the non-college vote by about 7 points last time, so that makes a lot of sense. If we look at the college-educated vote, we see Biden's only ahead there by about 8 points. We see in 2020, Joe Biden led by 10, and we see here that Joe Biden was winning the group by 5, the non-college group by 5 in the last cycle, which also kind of aligns with exit polling data. We see Donald Trump is only losing young voters by a single point here. He's losing 30 to 44-year-old voters by 5. He's winning 45 to 64 by 9 points. However, the 65-plus vote gap is a little big. I'm suspecting that to not be as high as it actually is right here. We also see party identification. What's pretty interesting is that the independent margin is actually exactly the same for both matchups. Donald Trump literally beats these candidates, each of them, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, by 2 points with independents in each of the polls. But we see here that Donald Trump actually does 5 points better with his own base, with Republicans against Kamala Harris. Donald Trump actually does 5 points better with that group than he does with Joe Biden. About 5% of Republicans that would vote for Joe Biden do not vote for Kamala Harris. What's funny enough is that Kamala Harris actually gets slightly more Democrats than Joe Biden does. So really the main difference here is that moderate Republicans just can't stand Harris. That is like the main thing that we basically gathered from our sample. And that is pretty much it for the poll. It shows a 3-point race, in the state of Virginia. And I mean, if you were to shift every single state by 7 points to the right, I mean, it's over at that point. I mean, Wisconsin would be a likely margin. You would have, if you were to shift every state 7 points to the right from 2020, I mean, it would just be a disaster for them because they would ultimately not be in a good spot. Colorado would literally be like at that point, Colorado at that point would be like an 8-point win. California would still be safe. Washington and Oregon would be a likely state. Alaska would be roughly a safe margin. Hawaii, roughly speaking, would probably still be safe. New Mexico would be in the lean Democrat column because it did vote for Joe Biden by 10 points, so a 7-point shift would indicate that Joe Biden would only win it by 3. Arizona would be a likely state. Nevada would probably, I think actually, if you were to shift the state by 7, I think actually it's like a little bit over 5. Iowa and Ohio, I think these would actually these would actually exactly fall into the plus 15 category. Like they'd fall exactly into safe margins. North Carolina, Georgia would be there. I think Michigan would be lean. Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure would be in the likely column. I think it would be like R plus 6 or something like that. Michigan would be like R plus 4.5. Nebraska second would be a lean Republican margin. It would actually be tilt, but that's for another day. Illinois would be likely. Minnesota would actually be really close because we see here about 7.1%, and the state technically shifts 7.1 percentage points. So it effectively becomes a toss-up at that point. New Hampshire would be a tilt Democrat state. Vermont, Connecticut, a couple of these states would still be in that safe Democrat column. I believe Connecticut would not be, and so would not, I believe Rhode Island would still be likely. I think all of these would be likely actually. And then the state of New York, if you were to do the 7-point math there, that's like roughly, it would fall right under 15 points. And if you got Maine's 2nd congressional district, that puts that district in a likely column. Maine's 1st would still be safe, and Maine at large would actually be a lean Democrat state still. So effectively, at that point, based on the Virginia poll, if you were to shift every single state 7 points to the right, 7.1 percentage points exactly, this is the map you get. You get Donald Trump with 313 electoral college votes, and Biden would get around 215. Now, what's interesting is that the polling area in Virginia was about 2.4 points overestimating Biden. So if you were to apply that to the state, that would actually indicate that the state is actually a tilt Democrat margin based off the poll that we conducted. And what's quite interesting is that we have a poll where Trump is actually up in the state of Wisconsin by a single point. We conducted this about a week ago or so. It has Donald Trump up by about a point in the state of Wisconsin. And what's pretty interesting is that the polling area there tends to be around 7 to 8 points off on 538. And so if you were to apply that, Donald Trump would be winning the state by 8 points, which, funny enough, if we go over to my website here, looking at my election forecast based on national modeling, we see Donald Trump gets 345 electoral college votes to Joe Biden's 193. And we see here Donald Trump is favored to win the presidency. And we have all my projections here. This is my official forecast for 2024. We see Donald Trump is winning Georgia by 8 points. North Carolina is a 12-point victory. Donald Trump is winning in Virginia by a single point as of right now based off of the demographic modeling that we've done. Wisconsin is up in the state, or Donald Trump is up in the state of Wisconsin by 8 points, up in Michigan by 6, up in Pennsylvania by 7, which, by the way, guys, in the RCP aggregate, Donald Trump leads by 5.3%. And the polling there usually overestimates Democrats, or it is dead on in presidential elections, at least the 2 cycles that Trump has been in it, and is considering the fact I think Trump is going to do slightly better with African Americans and Hispanic voters than expected, I think that more than likely a 7-point victory would be the most realistic outcome as of right now. We see Arizona is also a +7 state as of right now. Nevada would be a +10 state, so actually it would go red before any of the swing states would. Minnesota is a 1.5-point victory. We see New Mexico being a 2-point win there. We have the state of New Mexico actually moving to the right of the nation more than other states because there is a large Hispanic population there, and we believe that with the Hispanic trends, Donald Trump's going to be able to kind of push that state. Colorado is about a 4-point victory. Current internal data from the Democrats themselves have it as a 2-point race. I don't think it's going to be that close. I think a 4-point victory would be in a realistic range. I also think Illinois is going to be about an 8-point victory. New York, I actually only have it at 6 points for Biden, and I just did a video on this. We basically talked about the fact that the state of New York is actually, people over there are freaking out. Democrats are freaking out over the state of New York right now. And New Jersey is a 1.5-point victory for Biden in this forecast. And Maine at large is still a 2-point win for Biden, because when you look at polling that does it by, ranked choice voting, Biden's actually comfortably ahead in the poll. And so I think with ranked choice voting, I don't really think that Joe Biden is going to really lose a state as of right now. New Hampshire, I have it going to Trump by like about 2.5 points. So actually before most of the swing states, believe it or not, here. And we see the battlegrounds here. I have Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Colorado, New York, Virginia, New Mexico, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Maine, and New Jersey all listed as battleground states. And effectively, I break down me and Gold Crown Politics. We have an aggregate that we use. And essentially, we basically go ahead and average out all of the different polling. And then we average out that sample, and that gives us our raw adjusted average of 3.6%. And since we're predicting an historical polling error of 4.5%, which is exactly what happened in his adjusted model in 2020 to get a popular vote of +5.2 for Biden, which allowed him to predict every single state correctly last time, essentially we basically end up getting a popular vote of +8.4 in the national popular vote for Donald Trump as of right now, which I know seems a little crazy. That does seem a little high, but you got to understand here, when we look at approval ratings between both of the candidates, we see that Donald Trump has a 43.4% approval rating, while Joe Biden is sitting at 39. That's a 4.4 percentage point difference. And incumbents tend to actually underperform their national approval rating if there's a large third-party vote share. And right now, third-party candidates are polling relatively high compared to most cycles. And Clinton, despite Ross Perot only getting 8%, which that's around where Kennedy's polling at right now, he underperformed by 5 points in his approval. Now, the difference between Clinton and Biden is that Clinton was in the mid-50s. He had room to fall. Biden doesn't have room to fall at 39%. And you see up there, Trump, Obama, Bush, they basically performed around their approval rating. They actually overperformed their approval rating on average by about a point or so when the third-party turnout is low. And so that's effectively what's happening right now. And the fact that Trump is a part challenger, part incumbent candidate definitely kind of makes this a little bit iffy, because Donald Trump's approval rating is around 44%. But if you actually look, a lot of polling indicates that his job approval is actually significantly higher than this. There was actually a poll that came out recently that had Biden's job performance at 41%, but Trump's basically recall approval was around 51%. That would indicate a +10 national environment if the approval ratings were to stick. And that's not that far off from a +8 national environment. And when you actually break it down like this, our range is +7.4 to 11.4 in the popular vote as the margin for Donald Trump. And the median victory there is Trump +9.4, which is not that off from our forecasted aggregate margin. And if we look at this shift in the New York Times / Siena College polling and our polling that we did for the national poll, when you pull back to 2020, we see that there is an average 11.3 percentage point shift in the polling data. We also see here for our June poll, right after the debate, Biden was leading by 5.4 in the 2020 sample. In the national aggregate with third parties, Trump was leading by 5.8. That basically produces an 11.2 percentage point shift to the right. And we see our swing is 12.6 percentage points, which is not that far off from the polling here. And we see with RFK basically taking a large amount of the electorate. We see here every single time that Biden basically goes up in polling data, Kennedy goes down, and whenever Biden goes down, Kennedy goes up. So that indicates that third-party candidates would hurt Joe Biden on the national level more so than President Trump. I mean, Kennedy's definitely taking votes from Donald Trump, but it's definitely a lot more with Biden. And all the other third-party candidates are extremely liberal. And based on that, I really doubt that any of those candidates would actually be taking a lot of votes from Donald Trump as of right now. Now, I understand that Kennedy is only on 8 state ballots, but if about 8% of the electorate is polling that they are going to vote third party, I doubt they're going to get to the ballot and not see his name and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to just vote for the two-party candidates. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so more than likely, if a candidate were to get there, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm sure some of them would be like, oh, I might as well have to pick one now. And to be honest, I think that if that was the case, I feel like a lot of people would just write somebody in or vote for one of the other third-party choices last second. I really doubt that just because Kennedy is not on a state ballot doesn't mean that, Donald Trump is going to underperform or whatever. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think if somebody would have voted third party, they're probably going to just put, write in their choice or vote for the other third-party candidate. And if we look at primary turnout, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden in primary turnout by 8.2%, which in 2020, Biden beat Trump in primary turnout by 2.4%, ended up winning the popular vote by more than that. And so that's kind of the thing. Biden ended up outperforming because he did very well with independent voters. And so that's the thing. If Trump does better with independent voters and you see this base difference anywhere from an 8-point to 12-point victory in the popular vote seems pretty realistic, with a 10-point being the medium. So that is very, very interesting. And so basically the breakdown from this is that Trump at this point is at least expected to take the major swing states, which basically leaves these states as toss-ups. And on our map, those are the closest toss-ups as of right now. And Biden's at 191 electoral college votes. So it's like, that's the thing. Right now, there's such more room to grow for Donald Trump on this electoral map. And based off of all the analysis that we've done, looking at approval ratings, looking at primary turnout, looking at the fact that there's third-party candidates, looking at the swing, the net swing here, it is really showing all the signs that Donald Trump is actually going to win in an electoral college landslide. And our Virginia polling proves that the state is effectively within the margin of error. And if they were to place Trump with Kamala Harris, Trump probably actually wins Virginia by 3 to 4 points at that point as of right now. And so if you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this. I will be leaving the link to the website here so you guys can go ahead and check that out. And I will see you guys in the next video.